Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Game Design Archive with Edvard and Ludwig. I'm Ludwig, and as always, I'm here with Edvard. Hello, Edvard.
Hello.
What are we gonna talk about today, Edvard?
So, there's been some discourse around a new video from Matthewmatosis. I think the title was Aesthetic Deception, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, we have talked about, he made a game, right? A really good game. We talked about that in the past. It was very a very interesting puzzle game, right? And also I've watched a lot of his videos, and he talks about very interesting things, in my opinion. And even this video actually was really interesting, but I felt that I just had to talk about this video because the way he saw it was very different from how I view these things. So I guess the idea today is to just discuss that, right?
So I think there's two sort of places we could start this discussion. And I think the best one would be to how would you say this? Because I think that he brings up a few things in the video that aren't actually an example of what he's talking about, if that makes sense. So maybe we could start with that.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, that's a good idea. So in the video, he talks about aesthetic deception, right? And for me,
yeah, maybe we should explain what it is first, actually.
Yeah.
I think.
So the idea is that the aesthetics deceive what the player. What should you say it? You're tricked. You're tricked, yeah. Right? It's the concept, right? And so for me, the idea of tricking the player is in fact, or indeed, or whatever you were gonna use, he's sorry. I agree with that part of the statement, right? That you shouldn't trick the player. Okay. I think for me, the problem is that the things, for me, some of the things he brings up are not in the same category, right? That's my point, right? So the examples bring up things that, for me, is not related, right? I guess that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's, I think the way we view it as is that there, it's split into aesthetic deception and mechanical deception, right? Those are two different things. They are not the same. And, an example of mechanical deception would be one that we talk about all the time, Sid-Meiered RNG. That's not you could obviously argue that the UI, the looks of the UI are deceiving the player into thinking that the hit chance is different from what it actually is. But to me, that's on the mechanical side of things, if that makes sense. The developer's intention with Sid-Meiered RNG is to basically hide from the player that the number that is shown on the UI is actually wrong. And so it's the mechanic that's deceptive. It's the mechanic of the RNG roll or whatever that's deceptive. It's not necessarily the...
Well, I think for me at least, it's a bit different. I think specifically the rigged RNG, for example, is it's not... it is actually related to concretely to something in the real world, right? So one thing we discussed before this episode that was part of this, why we wanted to talk about this, is that in my mind you have you have aesthetic honesty, right, and aesthetic consistency, right? And in my mind, you don't really care about honesty. You care about consistency, right?
Yeah.
So and I guess we'll get more into that, what we mean later, but like it does actually not matter that much if the representation is honest. It's that it's consistent, right?
Yeah.
But you, like you said, just like bring it back to what you said, right? There are these things that does overlap with this, right? For example, or rigged RNG, because that is actually relatable to something in the real world more concretely, right? As in, you could take that, like for example, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something dumb, like there's a random time after you press jump where the character jumps or something, right? That would be sort of the same thing. Like it says, oh, your character will jump after 5 seconds, but actually he jumps after 10 or something. I don't know. Like it's
yeah, I think one way to look at it, more like that maybe makes more sense, or like shows why it's bad, is that like imagine that you have a health bar or something.
Yeah.
Like that health bar. Now we're already entering like abstract territory, but like that health bar is like an abstraction of health in real life, right? Because like in real life we don't have a health bar. We get stabbed and then like we bleed out and die and whatever, you know.
Yeah, you can like cut your arm and die, right?
Yeah. And so the health bar is an abstraction of this.
Yes.
It doesn't work as it does in real life.
Yeah.
But it like it uses something we know in real life, like, oh yeah, getting stabbed will hurt me, and like puts that into the context of the game. And so in the game, when I get stabbed, I get hurt. Like the consequences aren't necessarily the same as in real life, but the like it's an abstraction basically. And the thing that and that is not a problem, right? The fact that like the health bar works differently from like real life or whatever, that's not a problem at all. That's good, I would say.
No, it is like or I agree with you that it isn't.
Yeah.
But like from this perspective, if you want to keep aesthetic honesty, it is a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe honesty is not the correct word to use, but you get what I'm saying. Where it's like that's actually, if you're not used to playing video games, it's actually deceiving how health works, right? Why do I need to stab this guy 50 times for him to die? Right?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? But it's the important thing is that, well, you have one enemy and you have to stab that 50 times, and the next enemy you have to aim at like body parts, right? That's aesthetically inconsistent, if that makes sense. Like it's confusing because it's not consistent with its own rules. But if everyone has a health bar, even if it's hidden, right? But let's say it's visible, and so it's like, oh look, they have 50 health, so and you do 10 damage, so that's 5, right? That's like very clear, right?
Yeah. I was gonna get to that. So like an example of, you know, to bring this back to the like RNG example thing, you know, the RNG. It's like, if the game would make you deal more damage if you were struggling, right? Do you kind of get where I'm going here? It's like sort of like a comeback mechanic, right? That would be mechanical deception because the mechanics are not consistent, right? That's sort of, I guess, the point you were trying to make as well. It's like the damage that you deal does not actually have anything to do with the mechanics. It has to do with how well you're doing.
Yeah.
Now you could obviously argue that, well, that's a mechanic that you do more damage when you're low on health and whatever, and that is true. But I think you need to like frame it in a way where it's mechanical, because I think that the main thing here is that it's sort of hidden from the player to make them feel better or whatever. Because there are a lot of like, if you look at RPGs, you can do like builds where you have abilities that are like, oh, you do more damage when you're below 50% health or whatever. Like that's a pretty common skill in RPGs. And that's fine because that's like mechanically communicated to the player.
Yeah, somehow.
But when it's not, That's the problem, right? It's the same with the RNG. Like the RNG is not mechanically communicated to the player. It's there, like it's inconsistent to make the player feel good. That's it.
But I think I don't. Obviously, in the examples you said, I agree. But like, I think there are examples where you don't have to be as obvious with it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like, I don't know if I have any good examples. My point is that the as long as it's consistent, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if it makes sense.
Yeah.
With the exceptions, of course, right? But like very what's the word? Like very often, right? I think that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same with like isn't it like Half-Life 2 health packs and stuff like that? And I think The Last of Us does this as well, where it's like if you're low on health or if you're low on ammo, you get more ammo packs or you get more health packs.
And that's very dishonest, right?
Yeah. And I think the important thing there is that it's not like it's not the like graphics that are deceptive, it's the like game systems and mechanics that are.
But to go back a bit to like the main argument, right, that we were talking about, I feel like the idea that the graphics are representing the truth, I guess, is not true, right? I think so like maybe we can bring up invisible walls, right? So one example is like invisible walls, for example, and there are some great points made, right, about it, where like there's a gap and you should be able to jump through that gap, right? And there's an invisible wall, and that's like aesthetically deceptive, right? But for me, the problem is not that there is an invisible wall there. I don't actually care if there are invisible walls. It's again back to the aesthetic consistency, right? Because if we have a game, I don't know, you talked about RPGs, like JRPGs, for example, right? A lot of them, they don't really have physics engines even, right? The older ones. And there's like invisible walls everywhere. Like you can't go out of bounds. And that's not deceptive at all, because there is always invisible walls everywhere, right? So it's not confusing. But in something like a first-person shooter, where like assuming you can jump, like you can jump off cliffs or whatever, then it gets very confusing if there's like a gap you can't go through and there's an invisible wall, right? And so basically the difference there is like the expectations is the difference, not the aesthetics, right? So it doesn't actually matter that much if it's consistent with reality, because essentially nothing in games is consistent with reality, right? They're very, very abstract versions of reality, right? And sure, like if you go back in time, right, looking at older shooters like Quake or Doom, for example, right, though those are more aesthetically consistent, right, or like honest, right, because the way they built the levels is actually what the geometry is, right? But that's not actually that important. The important thing is that, like, it doesn't matter if they made a fancy model and an ugly, and the problem is that the way they make levels these days causes this to be inconsistent, right? Where it's like it's because the steps are separated, it becomes hard to you get what I'm saying, right? Where it's like, oh, I need to place this thing, and then they place a box on it, and the box happens to be too big, right? And they didn't think about it, and then that becomes like aesthetically dishonest, right? But it's not necessarily because they're doing it that way. It's because it is because they're doing that way, but like they could do it that way and still be like it could still be fine. Is my point, right? It's the point is that it's consistent, not that it's honest.
Yeah. I think to go back a little bit to what you talked about with like invisible walls and stuff. I think isn't it like Dragon Age Origins or whatever? It was quite a while ago I played it, but that like compared to
I don't think that has jumps and stuff. Ages. That's just
exactly. You can't jump. And like you said, it probably doesn't have like at least an advanced physics engine. It might have a very simple one. So the thing is that like if there is a ledge, you literally can't walk off it ever. Like even if it's a small ledge, you're like glued to the ground all the time in that game. And so what ends up happening is that, you know, if you walk up to a ledge or whatever, or if there's like a slightly raised platform or whatever, you can't walk off it. And like I mean, to sort of reiterate your point, it's not a problem in that game because it's consistent, right? So like if you could walk off most platforms and then all of a sudden one platform you couldn't walk off, that would be a problem, right? Because as you said, it would be inconsistent and it would be confusing, and like the graphics would be lying, quote unquote, right? Because you can usually do this, but this time you can't. But the thing is that if it is consistent, like if there are a lot of invisible walls everywhere, basically, then that kind of gets communicated to the player better. Because if I play something like Dragon Age Origins, I know that, when I walk up to that ledge, I'm not going to be able to walk past it because there's an invisible wall there. I don't even need to try it because I've tried it a billion times before. And that's sort of the important thing.
And I guess to keep it on walls, right? That in contrast to something like illusory walls or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like those are not. They are aesthetically inconsistent, and I do think they're actually kind of not that interesting. Because I guess it depends on how the game does it. But if we take a game like Dark Souls, for example, they are super lame, right? It's like, look, I could hit this wall, and it is like, am I supposed to go and hit my sword at all walls in the game, right? Mm-hmm. It's a super uninteresting way to do it, right? And it goes back to that thing where it's like, it's actually aesthetically
what do you mean?
Consistent? Yeah, exactly. It's not it's not aesthetically consistent, right? Because it's looked like every other wall, but if you have like some sort of mechanical hint, right, to where they are, then that's gonna be again aesthetically. I forgot the word again. What word did I use? Consistent, consistent, right? Like, I don't know, like maybe they glow or something, right? But obviously then they're not illusory walls. But you get what I'm saying, right? It would be consistent, right?
Yeah, like it would have to be something like, you can find a map which like marks all of the walls or something like that. I definitely agree, because last year I played what's it called? Hollow Knight Silksong. And that does that thing as well, where it's like some walls you can randomly break, and you kind of have to just like hit all the walls on the level to like see if it's breakable or not. And that's obviously super lame.
It's not interesting at all. I don't know why people.
Well, it's the dopamine hit when it's actually a wall.
Wow.
Oof, you get a bunch of coins. No, but it's
a dopamine hit when I Google where are all illusory walls.
Yeah, exactly. Interactive map for Hollow Knight Silksong. Exactly. So with this thing, I think like it's not necessarily the fact that the walls are hidden that's the problem. It's the fact that like
it's not consistent, right? Yeah. With the other walls.
Yeah, well, both that. Like it's not consistent. Like not all walls are breakable or whatever, or like maybe the breakable walls have like a crack in them or whatever. That would be consistent, right? But it's also the fact that like I guess this is not related to the topic actually, but it's just super boring.
Yeah. But it is. So like I just came up with an example now, right? In this moment. So Battlefield, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the new Battlefields, maybe not the new, but like I remember like 3 and 4. I think the new ones are the same, but I haven't played them, so I can't confirm, right? 3 and 4, they had these environments, right, where some of the buildings were they would be solid and some of them had breakable walls, right?
Yeah.
And that is very inconsistent, and it doesn't feel nice at all. It feels terrible actually compared to Bad Company 2 and 1. Because Bad Company 2 and 1, the maps were made in a way so you could break basically all buildings. So they were consistent with their own rules, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the newer ones weren't. So it felt really bad, right? Because it's like, oh, look, this wall is just, you can shoot an RPG at it and nothing is gonna happen, and then the wall right next to it, you can break that, right, with a normal gun.
Yeah, didn't even Battlefield 4 introduce that really shitty, what did they call it, Levolution? That's what it was called.
Maybe that was 4, I don't remember.
Maybe that was, I think that was 4, because I didn't play any after 4. And so like there were like special like buildings or whatever in the level that you could destroy in special ways that would cause this massive epic event or whatever. And you know, of course it was inconsistent with everything else as well. And so it ended up feeling like super arbitrary, because it's like, oh yeah, here's this like mini game you need to do on this map to completely destroy it. And the map always ended up worse somehow after the Levolution thing. Yeah. But yeah, that's like the destruction thing is a really good example. Because I think that's actually a really good example, because I think that's like a very valid critique from the like aesthetic deception point of view. It's like, because the developers of Battlefield, they obviously wouldn't make it clear whether a building is destructible or not, because they would end up having to make the game look less realistic. And they don't want to do that. And that is a problem, because like, as we've said, it ends up being inconsistent, and the like the way the game works is being communicated inconsistently, right? And it's like the cues for whether or not the mechanic interacts with this thing is not actually always present.
But
and so that is actually pretty good example. But I think
to compare it to like older Battlefields or other shooters, right? It's not like, just to clarify, right? It's not that it's confusing that you can't break buildings, right? Because if you couldn't break any building, that is consistent. Even though that's actually aesthetic deception, right? If you think about it, because it's like, well, this thing should break this building or whatever, right? But it's actually not an issue because it's aesthetically consistent, right? So the question is not, can you break building, or like, is it deceiving that you can't break building? Can you break any buildings, and like, how do I tell which buildings I can and cannot break, right? And that's what the like you said with Battlefield 4, for example, it's not clear at all what you can and cannot break, so it's deceptive, right?
I think this is a pretty good point to bring up, like realism in general, I think. Because I think this like idea of aesthetic deception kind of assumes that realism is the goal in a way.
Simulation of reality or whatever.
Exactly. So the argument is that for example, the hitbox or whatever. Like the hitbox is, actually that's a bad example. Let's take Coyote Time as an example. That's a good example. So like Coyote Time is inconsistent with reality, right? It's true. We don't have Coyote Time in real life. See, you can't jump while you're in there.
I want to make a counter argument to that. Not Coyote, not that. Not that you can jump in midair real life, but like, go. Sorry, keep going.
And so the argument is that since Coyote Time is not the way it works in real life, the game is deceptive, right? Because it isn't clear that Coyote Time exists, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And the thing is, I think the problem with this view is that it assumes that realism is the goal. And so if we look at something like a precision platformer, let's take Celeste as an example, right? That's like the number one popular precision platformer. So, like, I don't think the goal of Celeste is to like the physics system or whatever you want to call it of Celeste. The goal of that is not to actually mimic real life, right? It's supposed to be this like framework where you can build interesting levels, and the player has to do these really interesting like chain jump thingies with the crystals and stuff like that, right? That's sort of the focus of Celeste, and you have like the wave dashing and all that stuff, right?
Well, before you continue,
and so,
right, because you mentioned this before, so I just want to bring it up to like when we talked about it before the show.
Yeah.
That the way we view it is actually flipped. So like you said, in the way this view that it's trying to make it realistic, right, or whatever. But like for me, and I think for you as well, it's the way it should be looked at is flipped. So like the visuals is an abstraction of the mechanics, right? Not the other way around. Like we're not abstracting, trying to abstract. We have mechanics, and the visuals and the audio is just like a nicer way to present the mechanics.
Yeah,
right?
It's basically a way to make it, well, both more like visually appealing and fun or whatever. But I also think one important aspect is to like use something from real life to like reference, abstract it into the game, so as a reference, right? So like jumping in a platformer doesn't work in any way like jumping does in real life. No, not at all. Like if I want to jump in real life, I like do a little squat thing, and then I like I brace, and then I like push up with all my power, and then I like end up lifting maybe like 10-20 centimeters or whatever. But like in a platformer, I press space or X or whatever, and my guy like shoots up 2 meters into the air.
And sometimes you can double jump in there.
Yeah, exactly. And you can dash, and you can do a bunch of weird stuff. And so the point is, as you said, it's like now we're getting into weird territory again. So like the graphics, like the gameplay, the actual gameplay, you know, with the hitboxes and the Coyote Time and stuff like that, is not like, the goal is not to take the real life act of jumping and whatever and like putting it into mechanics. The goal is to take mechanics and then put the like abstraction from real life onto them, so that they are understandable and like
you can learn
presentable.
They make like them easier to understand, right? Because it's very like if you're presented with a grid of boxes, and you're a box, and you can move the box, and the box can jump, right? There is so many layers that you need to like process before even getting to the mechanics, right? Whereas if you have an aesthetic that's like, oh, you're in a forest and you're this dude, or in Celestial Lady, right? And you're walking and you're jumping, and right, that makes like you can take intuition from real life and apply it to the game, right? But it's not what the game is about. It's just helping you process the game, right?
Yeah.
It gives you,
and like adding a bit of visual camera.
Like another super good example is like games where you like shooters or whatever, right? Or a fighting game, like, or let's say like a beat 'em up, right?
Yeah.
If you present that without graphic, it's like, oh, you're a box and you're fighting like you're not supposed to go close to these boxes because these boxes make your bar go down or something, right?
Yeah.
It's super confusing, but it's like, no, these are like buff dudes hitting you in the face. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. I shouldn't go close. They look, and like they're drawn in like they look angry. So like I should not go close to them, right? But that's not actually the mechanics, right? That's just the aesthetic layer and sound as well on top of it that you use to make it easier to process the gameplay layer, because the game is the process. Game is the process layer. Oh my god, the game is the mechanical layer, right? Not the aesthetic layer.
Exactly, and then you also have like the added benefit of like, you know, if the enemy in something like Final Fight, if he's like a really skinny guy, you know that he's easy to take out, right? Or maybe he's fast, right? Because he's skinny and he's fast and he's nimble and whatever. But if it's like a really buff guy with big muscles who like walks super slowly, then you know, like that guy, he has a lot of health and he hits like hell, you know? And so like,
but
you're using these...
One thing though, sorry for interrupting you. One thing though, if it wasn't like that and all the skinny guys had a lot of health, that wouldn't actually, and let's say all of them is skinny instead, right? It's not confusing that skinny guys have a lot of health, right? It's just that the abstraction is different, right? It's confusing in that context, because in that context, you have these big, like you have the distinction between the big and the skinny guys, right?
Yeah.
But if everyone is skinny, it's not like, well, they should die faster, right? No, they could die in a million hits, right? That's just part of the whatever rules that you try to abstract stuff.
Yeah, because I think how do I say this? Like, I think because making a game, I think a lot of people look at it like, in fact, we've discussed this before, like it's this top-down thing where it's like, I want to make a game about this, and then you add all the mechanics and that's it, right? You don't think anymore about it. But if you allow the game to like develop on its own, right? Like you know, the bottom-up philosophy that we talk about a lot, and like people like Jonathan Blow talks about this as well, right? It's like he has this top-down idea, and then he like implements it, and he sees what happens, and he's like, oh wait, there's this like interesting thing I never thought about. Let's explore that or whatever. I feel like this this view that the gameplay, the gameplay is an abstraction of the graphics. I think that comes from the like top-down mindset, right? Where it's like, I want to make a game about jumping, and the first step is the graphics, and then we like when we actually implement it, we strip the graphics down into these boxes or whatever. But actually, what's happening is that you have this top-down idea, and maybe it goes into graphics, but then it goes into gameplay, and then it like feeds back into the graphics, right? So it's like, it's a very like complex process, and like obviously it doesn't look the same all the time. Like it depends on who's designing the game and so on and so on. But I think in general, good designers probably do have a very like bottom-up sort of, you know, exploring the mechanics as they develop, and like seeing where it leads, whatever, you know. And so from that perspective, graphics being an abstraction of the gameplay makes a lot more sense.
Yes. Even though they do matter a lot. Like you can have a mechanically identical game with different graphics and sound, and they will not be the same game. They will feel different just by changing aesthetics and audio, right?
Yeah.
But can I say one more thing about Coyote Time that's sort of not related, but it bothered me because, like, again, people were discussing Coyote Time, if it's good or bad. So I don't think it's good or bad, right? Again, going back to like, it's just how the rules set feels or whatever. But like another thing that people don't discuss a lot, I feel like, is how honestly terrible like all the hardware stuff is. We've talked about this in the past, right? Where it's like, if I press the A button on my Nintendo Switch, it's gonna take like 4 frames or something until I see it on my TV, right? It's awful. So like, you could even argue that like, well, Coyote Time is actually more accurate because like the character, like when I see the character on the edge, like the final step, that's when I press the button. And so the character, sure, they jump later like because it takes so long, right? It's not even they like, because the argument is always the player can't interpret when they should jump, but like I honestly think people are pretty good at that. It's that the televisions and the consoles have so much input lag that it just feels nicer to have some like it become basically like, because we were talking to Bogo about this, like with the rollback netcode, right? Rollback netcode is like the same thing as Kyoto time. It does the exact same thing. I mean, in the other direction, obviously, right? But it's like it's faking. It's like correcting reality. It's correcting the game based on limitations of reality, right? So it's like, oh look, like what we want is this to happen at the same time, but we can't because we live in different countries or whatever, right? So
so we have P.
So it actually takes time. So we'll just modify it so it feels like it is that way, but it's actually fake, right? And I think I think Coyote time is basically that. It's not about giving leeway to the player or whatever. It's more about I mean, it does give leeway, but so does rollback netcode, right? It also gives leeway to the player because otherwise you need to consider the ping, right? That's the
delay and stuff like that.
So from that perspective, I think that discussion is not. I mean, if you think both of those are bad, then but like I think that's worth it considering how. Like you need to consider.
Like technical limitations and stuff. And I also want to go back to Coyote time because I actually didn't get to make my original point because we went on a tangent. So I was talking about like the physics in the real world. Like they don't work like the physics do in something like Celeste, right? Because I've played Celeste and I've jumped in real life or whatever. No, but like, so my point is that nothing like Celeste is actually incredibly unrealistic. Like if you look at the physics, like the player character is super fast and they can dash and they can jump and they probably have like gravity that's different from the gravity in real life and stuff like that, you know. And so in this world where everything is different from real life, why can we not live in a world where you can jump slightly after you've left the ledge, right? If that makes sense. Because like all of this like jumping and stuff like that, that's already an abstraction of what's happening in real life. And so like my point is that it's not one-to-one with real life anyways, right? And so having something that is unrealistic or whatever, or like something that works in a way that it doesn't in real life, it doesn't actually like make the experience worse. No, it makes it better. From that point of view. Because like realism, like the game isn't actually realistic. That's the thing. Like nothing in the gameplay is realistic. I don't jump by pressing space in real life. I jump. I explained how I jumped in real life before, but you get the point. And that's sort of my point. It's that. Yeah, because it's even that like it's one thing you click and the character just flies up in the air. Where it's like no, you need to move like I don't know how many muscles to jump in real life, right? But like I think it's even like I said. I think it's even further than that. I don't think it's even like. I think it's a benefit that it's not. It's not like in real life, realistic? Right? Like it is a simplified view of a world, right? It wouldn't be better, and I think again we have talked about in the past in the past, right? Where a lot of developers. Actually, I don't know if we have, but like in the past, there was this big push, right? For like, oh, it should be realistic. But I feel like at some point, a lot of developers actually realized that that doesn't make sense, right? Because if everything worked as in real life in a game, that game would be kind of boring, right? You need to go to the bathroom multiple times a day and eat and all of that annoying stuff, right? I mean, eat is kind of nice, but not in video games. It's super lame in video games most of the time, right? Like like a perfect example of what was it? Don't Starve, you know, the game, right? In that you need to eat or whatever, right?
And that game, like the way you manage like your sanity and your food and stuff in that game is really interesting. But it would, like we just said, it wouldn't be more interesting if you had to like, no, actually you need like this many milliliters of water and like, you get what I'm saying, right? Where it's like, oh, now you're out of vitamins or something, right? Yeah. It's just annoying, right? It's just, and some games are like that, right? Some like survival games where they take this too far, I feel like. And it's super boring. And so like, yeah, I guess with again, a tangent, but like I just wanted to make that point clear, right? That what you're saying, it's not only that the mechanics aren't an abstraction of or they aren't mimicking reality, it's that you don't want it even, right?
Yeah, I think one thing in this discussion that I find interesting as well is the like grass from Breath of the Wild was brought up, right? And so that's taken as an example of like this is aesthetic, the opposite of deception. What's that? I don't know, but it's good, right? The grass in the Breath of the Wild is maybe good. Yeah, that's probably the word. It's aesthetically honest because like it's there. Right, the argument is that grass in other games is just like visual clutter, right? While the grass in the Breath of the Wild, that like you can light fire to it and you can like do stuff with it, and like the grass is interactive and it's like mechanically significant and so on. But the problem with this is that I think the grass in Breath of the Wild ends up being like this immersive sim system for the sake of a system thing, right? Where it's like, the gameplay of Breath of the Wild is, it's basically a Ubisoft game, right? You clear camps, you climb the towers to unlock the map and stuff like that. And in that, like,
you can't say that though, because it's Zelda. So
people will be super mad.
Obviously better than Far Cry and all of that, right? It's not at all the same.
It's literally
game.
Far
It's
Cry.
not the same game at all. No.
It is Far Cry.
It's way
I will die on that hill.
Oh no!
You can, anyways,
send all the hate comments to Ludwig.
Exactly.
I agree. By the way,
I'm gonna get like a bomb in my mailbox or something. No,
Zelda is absolute garbage. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go even further.
But anyways, going back to my point. So the grass isn't actually significant, and this was something that Blader pointed out. Like the YouTube channel Blader, he has a great channel. I recommend you check it out. It's like when you play The Legend of Zelda, like Breath of the Wild specifically, you don't like. The grass doesn't actually matter. It's like the point of the grass, like you being, like you can technically use the fact that the grass lights on fire to do useful stuff, but most of the time you can just like go in and slash and kill everything, right? And so it's the point of the grass lighting on fire system is the systematicness of it. Right? So it goes into this like immersive sim thing where it's like, oh yeah, we have a bunch of cool systems and everything is interactive and everything interacts with each other, but you still end up just walking around and shooting everyone because that's the lowest effort way to proceed in the level.
Yes, because you can make, like, I would argue something like Dwarf Fortress or whatever is interesting.
Yeah.
Like in the same way, but it's actually utilizing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm not saying that you should never do something like this. The point is that the Breath of the Wild doesn't actually utilize the grass to do something interesting. It just has the system there. And at the same time, the argument was that like grass that isn't mechanically significant is pointless and therefore you maybe shouldn't have it, right? But at the same time, grass that doesn't have any mechanical interactions, and this is an example that has been brought up, is that the grass can block your view or something like that. And to me, that is very significant, like mechanically significant. Like it obviously depends on implementation, but that can be very mechanically significant. even though there are no like systematic interactions with the grass. Just the fact that the grass can block your view is important. Now, grass is maybe a bit of a lame example.
No, well, it is a bit, but if like, I guess that's a bit different. But like a lot of games do actually do what you said, where like they make it a mechanic, right? Where it's like you can hide in the tall grass, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that is a good point. Tall grass stealth games. But no, I was gonna bring up the smokes in Counter-Strike because I always love talking about Counter-Strike. It's like technically, right now we're going into like weird abstract territory again. It's like technically the smoke, like if you don't count the visuals, the smoke does nothing, right? And this is sort of where the like aesthetic deception viewpoint kind of breaks for me, because if you look at it from that perspective, then the smoke in CS would be bad because it's aesthetically deceptive, right? Because it does nothing gameplay wise. The only thing it does is it looks a certain way, and the way it looks happens to block your view, right? And so that would be aesthetically deceptive. But that's not true, right? I think even people who like agree with this way to view it would say that the smoke is not aesthetically deceptive because it's an important gameplay element, right? Which it is, and this is sort of why I don't agree with this idea, because like the aesthetics, like it's sort of how do you say? Like it sort of assumes that graphics both don't and do matter a lot at the same time.
There is a slight difference there though. Which is that, like, so I said with grass, right? If you can hide in the tall grass, right? That is mechanically part of the system in a single player game, right?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in multiplayer games as well, like League of Legends, for example, you're invisible in the grass.
Because then there is like you actually get hidden in the game. Like it's not just that the grass is there and blocks the view. You actually get like a hidden status.
But my point is that in multiplayer games, you actually can, which is actually one thing that's really interesting about multiplayer games, is you can, since you're playing against humans, the visual and the audio layer impacts gameplay more, because you can, like you said, you can block the view of the player, and that actually affects the player because he's a human. Right? Whereas if it was an NPC or whatever, they wouldn't care unless there was a system, right?
Yeah. That's actually so that's actually a very good point, because I think one counter argument to what I just said about the smoke, you could say that, well, the AI in CS, their raycast gets blocked by the smoke, and so therefore there's a mechanical interaction there, right? But as you said, it's like, well, with a player, the player doesn't raycast to find the player or whatever, or the enemy player or whatever. They use their eyes and they look on their screen. And so in that case, there is actually like no underlying systematic thing about the smoke. It's just there and blocks the view. And that has like massive impact on the gameplay, right? Which is sort of my point. It's like you can't just dismiss say that visuals don't matter, basically, at the same time as saying that they do a lot, right? Is sort of my point. I
agree.
There was one more thing, which is, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I think, well, there's actually two more things. So we still haven't discussed hitboxes, so maybe let's start with that, because that's another big
probably the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably we've gone the entire video without discussing hitboxes, so let's do that now. So the argument is, of course, that the hitbox not being one-to-one with the model is deceptive because the player can't see the hitbox, and so they don't know when they will actually get hit or whatever.
Reaction.
I like to take this is an example that I brought up before on the channel, which is bullet hell shmups.
Those are fun.
Yes. So I was actually I was showing, like, I was streaming on Discord or whatever to a friend who, like, doesn't play that many games, but like he plays CS and stuff like that. And I was streaming when I was playing a bullet hell shmup, and like his first reaction was like, "What the fuck? Why don't you die? You're like hitting the bullets all the time or whatever." And the thing is that so the hitboxes in bullet hell shmups are usually very small because there are a lot of bullets on the screen, right? So that's sort of the
well, if we go abstract, right? The reason the hitbox is small, I mean, you could argue the ship should be small as well, right? But the reason the hitbox is small is so that you can fit more stuff on the screen. Exactly. If we just look at the boxes, right? So it's like, well, if you have a tiny box and all the enemy stuff is tiny boxes, then you can have a lot of boxes. But if your big box is very big and the enemy boxes are very big, then you can't have that many boxes on the screen.
Yeah.
Assuming it's boxes.
And that's sort of the philosophy of bullet hell, right? It's like we make the hitboxes smaller of both the bullets and the enemies, or the player or whatever, so that we can have a lot of shit on the screen and the player can dodge it and stuff like that. And the thing is that if we weren't if we weren't willing to make this compromise, we could not have bullet hell shmups because
well, you could actually make it by making everything tiny.
True,
but it's not as easy to read, right? It's easier to read.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
It's bigger.
So that's sort of the thing I wanted to get to. It's like the ship is like way bigger, like the player ship is way bigger than the hitbox of the player is. And I think there is a practical reason for this, and I brought it up before, and it's the fact that it becomes easier to find where you are. Because like if you have a hitbox that's like a super tiny circle or whatever. If you're like flying around in a sea of bullets, you're gonna like lose that pretty easily, right? You're gonna like, where the fuck was I? Fuck, I died.
I mean, it's the same for
right?
the enemy bullets. It's easier to track where they are.
Yeah.
Like having more.
True.
Like if we wanted to be abstract, right? Just the fact that you have like, so if you think about the player as a dot in the middle, it's like there you take damage, and then you'd have like a bigger circle that's another color. That's like. Something, and then you have another one that's another color. That would like you said, it would help you find. It's what am I trying to say? It's like distance judging, right? So because your ship is bigger and because the enemy bullet is bigger, it becomes easier to. So like what am I trying to say? Like let's say the tip of your ship is hit by the bullet, right? But that's not a hit, right? Because it's the center of the bullet and the center of your ship. But that still helps you because, like you said, you can more easily see where your ship is because it's bigger. But you also know more accurately how long until you're hit by that bullet. Because you can judge based on the size of the bullet and like... It's just easier to see stuff, I guess. I said that in a complicated way, right? But it's like...
Yeah.
Because like having some games have tiny bullets, right? And they are also harder to see than the big bullets, right? It's not just that your ship is big.
Yeah. And so like it becomes very clear when you look at it from this way that like bullet hell shmups are like very, very pragmatic in like how they work with the hitboxes and stuff, because it's very clear that like, okay, we want to have a lot of bullets on the screen. How do we do that? We make the hitboxes smaller. Okay, but now we like everything gets like hard to see because like everything is tiny. So we make the player a bit bigger than the hitbox, and so it's like very clearly like step by step. Okay, now we have the bullet hell shmup where the hitboxes are way smaller than the sprites or whatever.
I mean, even if that's not how it went down, that's what.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of what ended up happening, is my point. But then there's also another factor about like, where like bullet hell shmups are relevant, which is that, you know, it goes back to this thing where like the graphics are an abstraction of the gameplay, right? And so, or if you look at it from like the realistic point of view, right? It's like if you were flying a ship in real life, you would not be doing that on a 2D plane, right? You would be like in the air or in space or whatever, and you could fly in the Z-axis as well, right? Because it's real life and that's realistic. But in a bullet hell shmup, they're often like top down, right? And so you only have the X and the Y axis or whatever. And my point is that since the graphics are an abstraction of the gameplay, you could also say that the fact that the bullets don't like the hitbox doesn't match 1-to-1 with the ship, that's like an abstraction of the ship like tilting and turning and dodging and like stuff flying above and stuff like that, right? If that makes sense. Because if you look at it from the realistic point of view, it actually doesn't make any sense whatsoever that the bullets are like flying on a perfectly flat
you could
plane,
fly
because they're gonna be
them
like all over the place. Exactly. And so it becomes this abstraction thing where like if the bullet flies past your wing, you won't get hit because your hitbox is not the wing. The hitbox is like the core of your ship. And so it actually becomes this abstraction thing where like, okay, there's like this abstraction that I'm like dodging and flying around the bullets and like going up and down and stuff like that. And it's like when I get hit in the center of the ship, that's when I take damage, because that makes more sense if you're looking at it from the realistic point of view.
Sort of an abstraction of the visual abstraction, right? Or whatever.
Exactly.
Like you're abstracting. Like we talked about this when we talked about graphics in the in another episode, right? Where the more realistic the graphics is, the less you can do, like, or the other way. Sorry, like the more unrealistic the graphics is, right? Like you said about Celeste before, right? It's like you're just a pixel blob if you think about it, right? So it's like it's a very abstract abstraction, right?
Yeah, you don't even look like a person in that game. Like you're literally a blob.
But so like your imagination or whatever gets around that, like you said, with something like Bullet Hell. Well, it's like, well, the ship is like he's flying in space and he's like tilting the ship and doing weird maneuvers, right, in your imagination, sort of, right? But it's not actually what's happening on screen, right? So I totally agree with that. And that does get harder as you move to more realistic graphics, but not not like it's not it's never completely an issue, right? But I think you do see it a bit, like, you know, people talk about newer stuff looking more janky and stuff, and I think part of it is because graphics are I guess the word would be like it becomes sort of uncanny valley, right? Where it's like it's so realistic that you think that like the things that are not looking realistic bothers you, right?
Yeah, I think maybe it's like the graphics have gotten realistic at a faster pace than the gameplay. And so that's what's making it like look weird and be this uncanny valley thing.
Also,
where
you don't
like
want it,
you know, so like if we take like a Celeste style platformer, for example, if you would put hyper realistic graphics on that, that would look super weird. And I think the reason for that is that like the gameplay isn't realistic, right? And so there's this mismatch in our head where it's like, okay, but I'm seeing something realistic on the screen, but it's not behaving in a realistic way. So I think that's
like
where that's
Bollywood
coming from.
Movies or something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's like a really good example. They're like doing some weird like acrobatics, and it looks super weird because it's like faked in the movie or whatever, and that's what it ends up looking like. Cool, that's a very good. They are.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before to you, right? Where like you can take, like, this is not game related at all, right? But like to clarify the point we're making, like if I draw a square and I draw a triangle on top of it, that's a house, right? Because like that's how like abstractions work in our brain. But that's not a house. Like a house is it's a very complicated structure with a lot of like things, right? But no, like that's a house, right? Because like we know if we draw it like that, that's like an abstraction of a house, right? For our brains. Yeah. I mean, maybe you need to draw like a door or something as well.
Or a window.
But still, it's like it's not actually at all a house, right? It's like a bunch of shapes.
Yeah, I think one interesting like game example of this is what's it called? Thomas Was Alone. Is that the game? Where it's like everything is a square, or not like a square. Not a square, but rectangle. Like everything is just blocks or rectangles or whatever, and yet the game still manages to like convey this story of like people with personality and stuff like that. Which is like super interesting because it's like the graphics are super simple. They are the like hitboxes. They are the literal shapes and stuff like that. And yet this narration makes it so, unlike the animation of the stuff, like the way different blocks jump differently and stuff like that, that like imparts a personality into it. And so like you have this game where like you like intuitively understand all of this thing, like, oh yeah, that's a person who's jumping and they are happy or they are sad or they are lonely or whatever, but it's like actually it's literally just a block going up and down on your screen. So it's like you don't need the realism to convey all this. Is my point.
And that again goes back to the fact that like, even though we're saying that the aesthetics are an abstraction of the mechanics, the visuals still matter a lot, right?
Yeah.
And the same goes for sound, right? It's actually even more obvious with sound almost, right? Where it's like, if you remove sound, like we've made some like tiny games before, right? For fun, right? Or like at school or whatever, back in the day. And I think you agree that you can have the ugliest boxes or whatever, but if you add like chunky nice sound effects, then it's like it went from, oh, I'm a box that's shoot box, or like there pops up boxes from me, and it becomes this amazing, like there's a super good example. What was that from the Juice talk or whatever, Juice It or Lose It, where they're like you have two circles, and if they're just flat circles, and they go through each other, right? But if you add a sound, right, your brain thinks they bounce off each other.
They collide and like bounce off each other. Yeah.
Stuff like that, right? It's super important, right? For like, I think a big issue with a lot of game design discussions is that it underestimates these things, right? How they are like, these things make the game, right? It's not just like you can't think of the gameplay layer abstract. I mean, you can do it for a while or whatever. But these things like affect all of it, right? Again, like I said, you can have the same game with the same code and just change the theme and the sounds and the characters, and all of a sudden you do have a different game, right? It's gonna feel different because humans don't. Well, at least I don't like. You get what I'm saying, right? It's we're not interacting with this game like an abstract machine thing, right? It's like, no, because it sounds different and looks different, it's not the same, even though it's literally the same boxes, like the same code running, but no, because now you're like now it's a fantasy game instead of a sci-fi space game, and you're flying on a dragon and it's breathing like, that's not the same game. It's not the same game. It's a different game, and it's a big difference, even though the code is the same. Is my point. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. There was one thing I wanted to say about hitboxes, which is that I think this like obsession with having hitboxes be super fair, 1-to-1, whatever, stems from the thing we just discuss a lot about, like the fairness philosophy, or the you should be able to beat everything on your first try philosophy. Because it feels that way when people talk about it, because it's like, well, how am I supposed to know like how far the guy punches if it's not 100% consistent with the hitbox?
That's making but that makes an assumption that you can read that out of that anyways. So
whatever. So my point is that like we've made a bunch of videos on this, so you should check them out. But like fairness isn't necessarily interesting, right?
No, not at all.
It's in fact a lot of time uninteresting. It's the unfair stuff that's interesting, and so it seems like this stems from this, like, oh yeah, everything has to be fair and everything has to be super readable, and the game has to warn you when you're about to get hit so that you can react and dodge or whatever, and so you can parry and stuff like that.
Can I add one thing to that, right? I've thought about that a bit more recently, and I think that way of viewing it is a bit I don't want to use a mean word, but like maybe naive or something, because it's assuming that even that is clear the first time, right? Because I don't think if you give, like, I think a lot of these assumptions about what can be done in the first playthrough becomes a rat hole, right? Because it's like, well, you are assuming, like, even the people that really, 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 really try to make it, first time friendly, they are making a lot of assumptions about what players can do the first time.
I mean, they are even assuming that, like, people have played video.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Which
you
you can't make that assumption if you want to follow this philosophy, right?
So it needs to, like, consider that, all of it, like, down to, like,
yeah, because someone who's never played the game before, they're gonna struggle with, like, keeping the, like, I don't know, if we take Dark Souls as an example, they don't even know how to, like, that they can lock on to an enemy or whatever, and so they're gonna, like, have the camera look at the wrong way all the time, because they don't know that they can manually control it either. Yeah, exactly.
In fact, they probably don't even know how they can move their character if we're gonna if we have
true.
Like, I mean, like, you've watched someone, like, that have never played a game before. It's like they're looking down, right? It's like, oh wait, what am I doing? Oh, and then they look at the screen and then look down at the controller, right? And it's like they move forward and then they stop, and then it's like they look down and then they, move the camera, and then they look up again and then they move, right?
Yeah.
You can't make it, like, you need to. Yeah, this goes back to the frustrating stuff where it's like, right, where it's like, no, just make the player lose fast and they'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And that's the easiest way to learn about all of this, right? Because it doesn't make sense to argue like, oh, this box is too big, this box is too small. Yeah, but, like, it's not photorealistic and you're not moving muscles, so it doesn't map to reality anyways, right? It's like,
yeah.
You could rat hole that forever. You can be like, oh well, I actually raised my arm in that animation, so it should have been going through my, like, armpit or whatever and missing me or something. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, like, but you can't move the arm, right? So it doesn't work for me, I guess, is my point.
Yeah. No, and I think all of this, like, assumes that the player having to build the intuition over time is bad, which I don't agree with at all. I think, like, because it is actually interesting that there is this, like, if we take hitboxes in a fighting game as an example, right? There's, like, a lot of nuances in how these hitboxes work, and they change very slightly over frames and stuff like that. And
I actually think they overdo it sometimes, honestly. Like,
probably.
You showed me some images. It's like, look, that could be like 3 boxes. It doesn't have to be 50 boxes or something.
Yeah.
Right? But I get it.
But the point is that, like, there are these, like, really, really tiny things that you're not gonna notice unless you've played the game for, like, hundreds and hundreds of hours, and that's fine. Because that's depth, and we don't want to, like, remove depth in order to have the first time you meet this character be like, what am I trying to say? Like, it's not worth to remove all this depth and interesting stuff in order to make me not frustrated that the hitbox was a little bit inconsistent or whatever with the sprite.
And also it goes back to our original argument, right? Which is that no, they're not aesthetically honest, but they're aesthetically consistent, right? That's sort of the important thing, right? And I think actually in practice that's usually when people do complain about hitboxes, where it's like, a lot of the hitboxes are smaller, right? And then there's one of them that's, like, way bigger for some reason, right? Maybe it wasn't tuned or something. And then people complain about that hitbox.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not consistent with the other hitboxes, right? For some reason, maybe they didn't have time to tweak it, or maybe it was a balancing thing, right? Right. Yeah. Like a perfect example is, Spelunky, right? The guy that made the Spelunky, Derek Yu, right? He talked about that, where, like, he made the whip shorter and look, like, way weaker, because like it looked too powerful at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the hitbox it had or something, right?
Yeah.
So like it does matter, right? But it's like what am I trying to say? Like I guess you want to help to sell the theme or something, right? That's the important thing, right? It's like, well, look, if your whip looks like super shit, then you're not expecting it to not be super shit, right? And it doesn't matter if it's like accurately represented with a box. It's more about like, does it feel good or not good to use depending on how it looks, right? And so like I feel like the reason he changed it is because it looked more good than it was. Because he could just have been like, well, I just changed the hitbox, right? But he didn't. He changed the whip instead.
Yeah. Oh, so like the whip was consistent with the hitbox before, and now it's not. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I think so. Maybe. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The animation was bigger before, at least, right? He made the animation weaker. I don't know if it was actually visual. Like he didn't have images, so I don't know if it was actually matching. But I'm assuming that might be what it was, right? Where it's like the hitbox is actually they say like it was more accurately representing the whip before, right, or whatever. But now the whip is smaller, but the hitbox is bigger, right?
Yeah,
is my guess, at least. Maybe it was that, well, the whip was even bigger or whatever. It doesn't matter, the details. Like, the point is that that's also why, in general, games do, like we said, where, like, things that favor the player are generally slightly smaller because it's easier to, I guess it's because these things are an abstraction of more nuanced movement. It just feels better that things like touch each other and don't hit feels better than things don't touch each other and hit, right? That's the point.
Yeah. I mean, you could also argue that that's more realistic, right?
Yeah.
So, like, let's go back to the stabbing example from before, right? Like, in a game, in most games, if I stab someone and, like, the stab hitbox collides with the enemy hitbox or whatever, that enemy takes damage. And they usually take the same damage no matter how, like, far away I was when I hit, like how close I was to missing or whatever. But in real life, you know, if I graze someone with a knife, they're not gonna take as much damage as if I'm standing, like, right next to them and, like, shoving it into their heart or whatever. And so, like, this argument that it's more realistic if the hitboxes are 1-to-1, it's like, well, you know, at the same time, if you have to make the hitboxes 1-to-1, then you now also have to, like, implement a realistic damage model, because otherwise you're being aesthetically deceptive.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you, like, keep going down that rabbit hole until you have ultra realism, basically. And, like, that's not interesting. We accept that the hitbox, my hitbox is slightly smaller than my model is, or my sprite is, because, like, it doesn't make sense that I take full damage if I get grazed or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
And also back to your...
That's like an equally valid way to look at it.
Yeah, and back to your, like, muscle stuff, right? Maybe in reality you would, like, step to the side or something, like, or, like, move your... Like, let's say you aimed at your arm. Maybe you would, like, move your arm so it didn't hit or something. But you don't have that nuance in the movement in the game. So it needs to consider that. Yeah, and, like, and of course, like, sometimes you want to do the opposite, right? Where it's like you don't really, like, you'll be just favoring the player. Like we talked about coyote time, or like pickups, for example, in games is usually bigger, right? And, like, again, it's just like you could argue there again. It's like, well, it's unrealistic. You didn't touch the pickup, and it's like, yeah. But the thing is, with the stuff with judgment like that, I feel like, and to be clear, it's not wrong to do it the other way, right? If you have a pickup that's just the size of a pickup, like, again, as long as it's aesthetically consistent, like we said, I'm totally okay with it. Yeah. But I understand as a designer why you want to make the pickup bigger than it is, because in general it feels nice to give the player more leeway in that way, because of the reason you said, where this is an abstraction of reality. The player can't take their arm and reach out and grab the thing. He's a little blob box on the screen, right? So empowering them in that way, right? Where it's like, no, you can take things that are further away from you, and enemies don't quite hit you if they touch you, right? Because the controls are very limited. Yeah. I don't know if I made any point useful with that.
I think it made sense.
Thank you.
But yeah. Yeah, so it ends up being this thing where it's like, oh, you should make the graphics more realistic, but then, because it's more aesthetically honest, but then you also have to make the gameplay more realistic, because otherwise the graphics are still deceptive, right? And so it ends up not really solving the problem. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say? We've been speaking for a while now.
I mean, as always, I can talk forever, but I think that might be a good point to stop it.
Yeah, I think we've made our point as well. Hopefully, whoever listened enjoyed it. Leave a like, comment. Say what you say. This is probably like a controversial topic.
Go watch Matthew's video. I'll link it in the description. And go play his game. His game is really cool. Logic Bombs, right? Is the name. It's really, really cool puzzle game, actually. We made a video by that as well. Back in the... What was that? Oh, it was earlier this year, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Or late
last
year. I don't remember.
Anyways. January or something, I think. Yeah, I can link that as well. Yeah. And go check out last week's episode. It was really interesting episode. We had the game designer Bogog on. He made some really cool points about, well, a lot of topics actually. So it was more of a general discussion, but it was really interesting to talk to him because he had really interesting stuff to say. Yeah. So we check that out as well. And check out his games. Yeah. Again, even though I said that last week, check out his games. Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.